Good morning, I'm Tracy Sinclair here at Alaska's News Source, and welcome to another edition of In-Depth Alaska. And today we're going to be talking about air quality in the Fairbanks area and some new research about what might be happening in the region. And obviously air quality has been an issue around Fairbanks for a number of years. So we're going to bring in James Campbell. He is a UAF doctoral student studying this. And James, before we get into kind of what you found out, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this. What is your field of study?
I started at UAF. I did my undergrad at UAF in chemistry. Then I worked with my advisor, Jing-Chu Mao, who's also at UAF, and we've been working together for quite a few years. But he's been doing a lot of air quality research, and I've been doing air quality research with him the past few years.
And so Fairbanks, again, has had a known issue with air quality. Give us kind of an idea about what the problem was, and when you started this research, what were you looking for? What did you expect to find?
Well, yeah, Fairbanks has had pretty bad air quality for many, many years. And one specific thing that we were interested in is a chemical called HMS, which stands for hydroxymethane sulfonate. And this chemical is interesting because I won't get super into the details, but it can be measured as sulfate in a lot of cases. So a lot of measurements, they think they're measuring only sulfate, but it can also measure HMS accidentally. And what's interesting in Fairbanks is that this chemical HMS is much higher than in a lot of other places and even more polluted regions. So one question we were interested in is, why is this chemical species so high in Fairbanks compared to other regions? And that was, I think for me, that was the main question that I was focused on.
So if as we discussed before, I read part of the report. Some of it got a little technical for me and I didn't quite understand. But basically, one of the issues is you were looking at or saw low sulfur fuel actually changes the air quality. It was mostly acidic, and then the pH got changed. Basically, if I understand it correctly, we were taking some particles out of the air but putting different particles into the air. Is that kind of?
But basically there are two main chemical species in Fairbanks that affect the pH of aerosols. And in this case, aerosols, we're talking about very small water droplets in the air. And so there's two main chemical species that affect that aerosol pH. The first one is ammonium, and the second one is sulfate. And ammonium, it raises the pH, and that's already in the air. And so what we're thinking is that if you reduce sulfate, which could be reduced from if you switch to low sulfur heating oil, you might reduce this primary emission of sulfate. But since ammonia is there and it's making the pH higher, you will form other chemical species in the air because these reactions are pH dependent. So things that form, or the reactions that form sulfate and also HMS, are pH dependent. And if the ammonium is high, then these reactions can happen faster. So the idea is that if you reduce primary sulfate, you might get more other reactions that form sulfate and HMS. And it makes mitigation strategies a little bit more complicated.
Now, does HMS, I know, as you said, we're talking about very small particles in the atmosphere. And if I understand it correctly, again, those are ones that we could possibly breathe in, and that's why they're a concern. Does HMS have a health issue with that one, similar to what, like a sulfate might?
Yeah, so um, we're the main uh, the main thing we're looking at is PM 2.5, which is particles smaller than 2.5 microns, and then this size range, um, you breathe in the air and they can get into your lungs in that area. As for the specific health effects of HMS, I think that is not very well known. There are some speculations about it, but I'm not going to say what those are. I'm going to stick to the hard science.
And so you guys have done this research. I think you said that the information came from data collected in 2022. I know we've also reported recently that there are some new monitoring equipment that is going in. I guess the question is, what's next? What do you do with this information, and where do you go for your next bit of research?
Well, hopefully the goal is to have this research help future mitigation strategies in Fairbanks and the Fairbanks area. Um, there, we're hoping that this will contribute to that because it makes the picture of air quality in Fairbanks more complicated. It makes it more difficult than just reducing one thing because there are potentially other things that are going to be formed when you do that. So yeah, that's that's the main goal, I guess, is to try to make this air quality a little bit better.
Right. So as we said, if we reduce the sulfates, the ammonium goes higher, and that could make other particles form in the air. Secondary aerosols is what I believe they're called, and those create different particles. So you're right, it does make the whole air quality situation that much more complicated out of Fairbanks. It's not just a simple one-size-fits-all solution.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to be working on next? Is this project done? What's the next area of study for you?
Well, for me, I mentioned HMS earlier. One thing we're also looking at is the precursors to HMS, the gases that form HMS. And there's two. One is SO2 gas, another one is formaldehyde gas, which are both relatively high in Fairbanks. So right now I'm trying to determine the sources of formaldehyde gas here in the Fairbanks area and try to figure out where the formaldehyde is coming from. Then hopefully by reducing those sources as well, you could reduce HMS formation and other particle formation here in the Fairbanks area.
And one quick question that I should have probably asked earlier, one of the other issues is temperature. How does the temperature, because I know you were talking, at least in the article, about when it gets to below 30 degrees or near 40 below, how does temperature impact the development of these other particles?
Yeah, so I mentioned that ammonium in Fairbanks is the main species that raises the pH. So part of the reason for that is it's so cold in Fairbanks. Well, I should mention there's ammonia gas and ammonium in the aerosol particles. So when it's colder, the gas is more likely to go into the water particles, dissolve into the water particles, which helps raise the pH. And so at the extreme cold temperatures of Fairbanks, you get a lot more ammonium going into the particles, which raises the pH higher compared to other regions. So in warmer regions around the U.S., even though they can have a lot of ammonium, the temperature is warmer, and so most of it is in the gas, or more of it is in the gas phase, and so less of it is in the particle affecting that pH. But in the case of Fairbanks, it's so cold that we have much more going into the water, dissolved aerosol water, and then that raises the pH more compared to other regions. And so that is the main effect of temperature, is that it helps ammonia dissolve into the water, which will raise the pH.
Well, I think I have a better understanding. I hope I have a better understanding, but as you said, it is a little bit technical. James Campbell, thank you so much for joining us on In Depth Alaska. We appreciate it, and thank you all for joining us. You can find more tonight at 6 and 10 on Alaska's News Source. Have yourself a great day.